The sun hung low over the hills, heavy and red, casting long fingers of light across the yard where dust drifted like smoke. The cattleman's auction always smelled of iron and sweat and animals that knew they were being weighed in coin. The cries of traders and the moans of livestock mingled in the air until the whole place felt alive, pulsing with greed and hunger. Men shouted over one another, boots grinding into the dirt, and the sound of a whip cracked now and again, sharp as lightning in the still heat. In the far corner of the yard, tethered to a post meant for horses, stood a girl. Her dress was grey with dust, threadbare at the hem, and her left leg bore a brace of splintered wood tied with frayed leather. The wind lifted her hair across her face, hiding her eyes, though every now and then the motion of her breath revealed the hollow curve of her cheek and the quiet tightness of her mouth. She did not cry or beg, though her wrists were chafed raw where the rope cut her skin. The people passing by barely looked at her. To them she was nothing more than a burden, another mouth no one wanted to feed. Her uncle stood beside the auctioneer's table, his voice hoarse from a day of bargaining. His shirt clung to him with sweat, and his fingers fidgeted around the brim of his hat as he leaned close to a man in a fine coat, speaking in a low, eager tone. The girl could hear his words clear as if they were whispered in her ear. "Not worth much," he said. "Can't haul water, can't cook right, not since the accident. Eats more than she earns. She's no good for work, no good for family." He laughed then, a dry, cracked sound that carried across the yard. The man he spoke to turned away. So did the next. And the next. Each took one look at the girl's leg and moved on, shaking his head as though insulted by the offer. Her uncle's frustration deepened. The day was slipping away, the buyers thinning out. The girl kept her head down. She had learned long ago that silence made her invisible, and invisibility was the only kindness left to her. At the edge of the yard, a tall man leaned against a post, half hidden in shadow. His hat was pulled low, the brim casting his face in shade, but the lines of him, broad shoulders, calloused hands, the quiet stillness of someone used to command, set him apart from the rest. He had not spoken much that day. He had come for horses, perhaps cattle, yet he lingered longer than most, his eyes sweeping the yard with the patience of a man who measured worth in something other than gold. When his gaze fell upon the girl, he did not look away. The uncle noticed him watching and stiffened, sensing a chance. He straightened his shirt, wiped his brow, and barked toward the post, telling the girl to stand proper and lift her chin. She did as she was told, though her leg trembled under her. The brace bit into her skin. Her uncle called out to the stranger, saying he'd make a fair deal for a man with coin. The tall man pushed away from the post and came closer. His boots stirred the dust, slow and deliberate. The closer he got, the quieter the yard seemed to grow, as if even the wind waited to hear his words. The uncle began to talk fast, words spilling over each other in a rush of excuses and promises. "The girl's not useless," he said. "Just a little slow from the fall, that's all. She can still sew, still fetch, still do as told. You could have her cheap, cheaper than a mare with a limp." The man did not answer right away. He looked at the girl, not the brace, not the dirt clinging to her skin. She could feel the weight of his gaze, but it wasn't cruel. It was steady, curious, like he was trying to see past the grime and silence to whatever truth lay hidden beneath. She forced herself to look away, heart pounding, her throat tightening until it hurt to breathe. She had been looked at many ways before, with pity, disgust, ownership, but never like that. Her uncle cleared his throat, impatient now, and tried again, his voice sharper. He said she was trouble. Said she broke her leg trying to run away. Said she wouldn't last a week if left alone. He laughed again, pretending it was a joke, though his eyes darted nervously between the man's face and the pouch at his belt. The stranger finally spoke, his voice low and even, roughened by years of dust and sun. The girl couldn't make out the words, only the sound of them, calm, unhurried, like a river moving through stone. The uncle blinked, then nodded quickly, too quickly, as if afraid the man would change his mind. Coins clinked against the table, bright and final. A few men nearby turned to watch, curiosity flickering in their eyes. It wasn't every day someone bought a broken girl. The uncle counted the money, his mouth curling in satisfaction, and then waved his hand dismissively, as though casting off a weight he'd carried too long. He untied the rope from the post and shoved it toward the man. "She's yours now," he said. The girl stumbled forward, catching herself on the wagon's wheel. For a heartbeat, she thought he might hit her again for clumsiness, but the man only took the rope from her uncle's hand and tossed it aside. The gesture was small, almost careless, yet it struck her like thunder. She blinked at the ground, unsure whether she was meant to follow him or wait. He gestured toward the wagon with a quiet tilt of his head. She moved slowly, favoring her good leg, and climbed up onto the worn wooden bench. The seat was cracked, the leather dry beneath her palms. Her brace scraped against the step as she settled in, and the sharp pain that followed made her bite her lip until she tasted blood. He took the reins and climbed up beside her. The wagon creaked under his weight. He gave a short flick, and the horses began to move. The sound of hooves striking dirt filled the space between them. For a while neither spoke. The noise of the auction faded behind them, swallowed by the open stretch of road and the slow rhythm of the wheels turning. The girl sat rigid, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She could feel the man's presence beside her, solid and quiet. Every few moments she glanced at him from the corner of her eye. His face was sun-worn but strong, his jaw rough with stubble, his eyes pale beneath the brim of his hat. There was a calmness in him that made her uneasy. Men who were calm were often the most dangerous. She braced herself for questions, orders, anything that would remind her she belonged to him now. But none came. Only the creak of the wagon, the snort of horses, the steady hum of wind across the grass. After a long while he spoke, his tone softer than she expected. He asked her name. For a second she couldn't remember how to answer. It had been months since anyone had asked it. When the word finally left her mouth, it sounded small and strange, like it belonged to someone else. Lila. He repeated it once, as though tasting it, then nodded. He told her she'd rest a while when they reached his ranch. No work until the leg was better. The words didn't fit in her ears. Rest. Better. Those were things for people who were cared for. She stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. She told him quietly that the leg would never heal. That the doctor said so, that she was born unlucky and would die the same. He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked toward her leg, then to the horizon again. He said, almost to himself, that sometimes doctors didn't see what was truly broken. The wagon bumped over a rut, jarring her knee. She winced but didn't cry out. When she looked up, she found him watching her again. His gaze was steady, not pitying, not curious anymore, something gentler, harder to name. It made her chest ache in a way that frightened her. No one had ever looked at her like that, as though there was still something worth finding beneath the dust and scars. For a moment, she forgot the pain in her leg. The sun had dipped lower now, bleeding gold across the open land. The air smelled of dry grass and horses and faraway rain. She realized with a start that she was breathing easier, as though the rope that had hung around her for years had loosened. He smiled then, just barely, the kind of smile that carried warmth without asking for anything in return. He said her name again, slow and certain, as if making a promise she couldn't yet understand. The sound of it settled over her like a blanket, soft and unfamiliar. She looked down at her hands. The skin was cracked, nails rimmed with dirt. Hands of a servant of a girl forgotten. But in that moment she wondered, for the first time in years, whether there might be a place in the world where she could be more than what she'd been told she was. The horses kept moving, their hooves steady, carrying them away from the noise and cruelty of the auction yard. The hills opened before them, endless and wild, and the last light of day stretched across the plains, like a road to somewhere new. He said nothing more, and she didn't ask where they were going. It didn't matter. For the first time since she could remember, no one was shouting her name in anger. No one was trading her for coin. The silence around them was not heavy or cruel. It was the kind that left space to breathe. She leaned back against the seat and watched the sky deepen to violet. Her legs still ached, but the pain felt distant now, small against the strange quiet blooming in her chest. She told herself not to trust it, not yet. But still, as the wagon rolled on and the stars began to show, she allowed herself a thought she hadn't dared in a long time, that maybe she wasn't broken after all. And beside her, the man who had bought her said nothing, but the way he held the reins, steady, careful, as though guiding not just horses but something fragile and precious, told